12:30. In this class, we're going to study the fifth Aesop fable, which is the cock and the jewel. So we're beginning our fifth fable. Let's get our notes ready. At the top of your paper, write your name and today's date. And the title of this course is Aesop's Fables. And the title of this fable is The Cock and the Jewel. This is our fifth fable, like I said. So far we studied the fable of the two frogs. We studied the fable of Jupiter and the camel, the lion hunting with other beasts, the stag looking into the pool, and now the cock and the jewel. This is an important fable for us to talk about because when I grade student assignments, this is one fable that kids always get wrong. They always misunderstand the moral of this fable, and I get some pretty wacky answers. So I want to make sure we talk about this fable, that we read it carefully, that we focus on all the details. And I'll explain to you what students get wrong in this fable so you don't have that problem, okay? So this is the fable of the cock and the jewel. And first of all, we have to just talk about the title and the characters. When we talk about a cock, we've learned about a number of different animals so far. A cock is just another name for a rooster. So in modern times, we usually refer to them as roosters. It's a male chicken, a rooster. And if you've ever had chickens before, you should think about, what do you know about a rooster? What are they like? We use the word cocky. When we say that someone is cocky, what we mean is that they act like a rooster. That's what we mean. If I say, oh, you're very cocky, it means you're walking around like a rooster. Okay? So tell me some more. What do we know about roosters? What are roosters like? They like to boss everyone around, right? They're bossy. They're the bosses of the chicken coop, right? If you throw a piece of food into the chicken coop, the roosters will beat everybody up and grab it, right? Chase everybody away and get the food. What else do you know about roosters? They're nasty. They can be really nasty. They're pretty brave, right? You can have a rooster run after a man. I've had roosters come after me a couple times. You know, yeah, they're brave. They're nasty. They're not afraid of men. They're not afraid. We could be 4 times taller than a rooster, and he doesn't care. He'll come chase you down, right? They're nasty. They're bossy. They're brave. But the problem with a rooster is that they're not lions, right? And they also get beat up a lot. So they're kind of dumb. And a good example of a rooster, if you think about the cartoon Foghorn Leghorn, he's an example of a rooster, you know? He's a good example. So the problem with the rooster is they're cocky, they're bossy, they're nasty, they're brave. They think they're like the tough guy on the farm, but they get beat up. The dogs beat them up. Birds, like hawks, can kill them, right? So they think that they're tough. They think that they're the boss, but they're really not. And they don't understand that the only reason we even have roosters is because we want chicks and eggs, right? They think they're so important. But they're really not as important, not as tough as they think they are. Right? They're not the bosses of the farm, even though they think they are the bosses. All right, so we have some ideas to think about before we start reading The Cock and the Jewel. So just like I always say, we want to read the fable, but we have to pay attention to all the details. And this is a fable where we really have to make sure we pay attention to the details, because it causes kids to get the moral of the fable wrong. Okay? Because they don't pay attention to the details. And that's why they write things that they write. And I'll share with you some examples of morals that students have written to me about this fable, and you'll see why they're wrong. Okay, so let's read together the fable of the cock and the jewel, the rooster and the jewel. Pay attention to all the details. A brisk young cock, scratching for something with which to entertain his favorite hens. Okay, so what do you know about this cock or this rooster? Well, before that, what do you know about him? No, before that, very beginning. A brisk young cock. He's young. He's a young guy. Right? A brisk, energetic, young cock or rooster. So he's not some old, tired rooster, right? He's this young, brisk cock scratching around. What's he looking for? What's he doing? He's looking for something to entertain or please his favorite hens. Is he looking for food? That's not what it says. Okay? Is he looking for a worm? That's not what it says. It says he's looking for something, scratching around through the dirt, looking for something to entertain his favorite hens. He's looking for something to charm the ladies. Okay? This brisk young cock scratching around, looking for something with which to please the ladies. That's what he's doing. And as he's scratching around, he happened to turn up a jewel. He happened to turn up a jewel. Feeling quite sure that it was something precious, but not knowing well what to do with it, he addressed it. That means he spoke to it. The cock spoke to the jewel with an air of affected wisdom. And that phrase right there is what I think most kids don't understand, and they miss the whole point of the fable. It says he addressed it. He spoke to the jewel with an air of affected wisdom. An air means with an attitude, and affected means fake. Okay? Affected means he's acting with fake wisdom. It said in the sentence before that, it said he felt quite sure that it was precious, but he didn't know what to do with it. In other words, he found something and he thinks it might be valuable, but he doesn't know what to do with it because he's not wise. He doesn't understand what to do with this thing. So instead of being humble and admitting that he doesn't know what he's doing, he speaks to the jewel with an air of affected wisdom, with an attitude of fake wisdom. He pretends that he's a know-it-all. And he says, "You are a very fine thing, no doubt. but you are not at all to my taste. You are a very fine thing, no doubt, but you are not at all to my taste. For my part, I would rather have 1 grain of dear, delicious barley than all the jewels in the world. And that's the end of the fable of the cock and the jewel. Now, the error that students make, and I'll have students who complete the assignments for this fable, and they'll write to me, this fable teaches us that we should not care about jewels and worldly things, but we should only care about what's important for life. And many students read this fable and they think that the cock was actually wise and good because he found a jewel and he said, I'm not interested in worldly stuff. I just want my food. And so they actually think that this fable teaches us that the cock was wise. And that's wrong, you know? The reason why they say that is because they see the word wise in there and they think the fable is saying that the cock was wise. But that's not what it says. It says he addressed or he spoke to the jewel with an air of affected wisdom. He pretended to be wise. He knew that the thing was valuable, but he didn't know what to do with it. And so instead of admitting that he doesn't know what to do with it, he pretends that he just doesn't want it. He says, I'm sure you may be valuable to other people, maybe. Some other people might like you, but as for me, you're not my taste. You see, he just pretends like he's not interested in it. But the reality is he doesn't understand what to do with it. And he's only pretending to not be interested in it. And then he says, I would rather have 1 grain of barley than all the jewels in the world. Why is he scratching around? Looking for food? Looking for something to impress the hens, right? But then in the end he said, I would rather have 1 grain of barley than all the jewels in the world. Well, what happened to his original purpose? Do you think the hens would rather have 1 grain of barley than all the jewels in the world? I don't think so. So he forgot what his original purpose was, and because of his pride, instead of admitting that he found something valuable and he doesn't know what to do with it, he tries to pretend because he's a cock and he's cocky and he's a boss, he has to try to act like a know-it-all. He pretends like he just doesn't want this jewel. It's not what he's looking for, right? And so he throws the jewel to the side and keeps digging around for a piece of barley. And that's the fable of the cock. So what's the moral? The moral is not that the cock is wise and he chooses to have just what's necessary for life and he's not interested in expensive things. That's not the moral of this fable. That's a mistake students make, okay? The moral of this fable is if you're cocky, right? If you're cocky, you may lose something valuable. If you're cocky, you may lose something valuable. Write that down. The moral of this fable. If you're cocky, you might lose something valuable. This is a young cock, right? A young cock trying to impress the lady chickens on the farm. He's scratching around and he finds something valuable. He knows it's valuable, but he doesn't know what to do with it. And so he just kicks it to the side. what should the cock have done? What could the cock have done that might have helped him make a better choice? What do you think? Maybe brought it to someone else, right? Asked someone for advice. Say, hey, old rooster, hey, grandpa, I found this out in the pen. What is this thing? What can I do with this thing? And the grandpa might have said, you can use that to buy 20 bags of barley. Right? If he would have asked for advice, or if, one of you said if he brought it to the master, right, brought it to the farmer might have said, holy mackerel, I can use that to buy a whole week's worth of feed. So if he was humble and he asked for help, especially being a young cock, he could have asked someone who had more experience and was older, but he didn't. What?
If he brought his master might have sold the farm with someone else.
Well, I don't know if it was that valuable as a jewel, right? It wasn't like the gigantic mountain diamond, right? It was probably a valuable stone or something like that. But the point is that his arrogance, his cockiness, caused him to lose something valuable, right? Because he just wanting to be the boss, wanting to be the big shot, strutting around trying to impress the ladies, he actually found something valuable, but he didn't know what to do with it. And instead of seeking help or looking for advice, he chose just to act like he didn't want it, when really he didn't even know what to do with it. And he ended up making this really ridiculous saying at the end. He says, I would rather have 1 grain of barley than all the jewels in the world. That makes no sense, right? Because what he should say is, I would rather have 1 jewel than all the barley because I can buy barley. Right? But why would anybody want 1 grain of barley rather than a jewel? That makes no sense. Okay? So his cockiness leads him to make this foolish statement. Right? It's like saying, I would rather have 1 penny than all the dollars of the world. That would make no sense. Get it? No sense. So anyway, it leads him to a foolish statement. Okay? So the moral of the story is that if you're cocky and you don't seek advice, you may make bad decisions and lose valuable things. If you're cocky and don't seek advice, you may make bad decisions and lose valuable things. And we see people doing it all the time, all the time. I know I've certainly done it times in my life when I was trying to strut around like a brisk young cock, and I thought I had everything figured out and made bad decisions. People who are older than you have experience. They know how to do things that you've never done before. They've already been your age. They've already done many of the things you need to do. And if you find yourself in a situation where you know that you're supposed to do this, you know that there's this valuable thing, but you just don't understand what to do with it, you need to ask for advice. Right? You understand that? And the reason why people don't like to ask it, they don't like to ask for advice, is because of this. Because they're cocky. Right? They want to look like the boss. They don't want to ask for advice. So that's the moral of the cock and the jewel. Now, why do you think that Aesop chose the cock to be the main character of this story? What do you think?
Because they're cocky and they're boss.
Yeah, he's just a symbol of that cocky, arrogant spirit, right? They think they're the boss. The roosters aren't even strong animals, and they strut around like they're in charge of the place. And what's funny is when you live on a farm, you might think, how could a farmer cut the head off a rooster. Some people think, I could never do that. I could never kill an animal. I could never chop the head off a rooster. How could anyone do that? Well, the answer is, when you live with a rooster, the rooster makes it easier and easier to cut his head off, doesn't he? Right? All right, so he chose the cock because of the spirit of roosters and what they're like, and just about everyone understands what a rooster's spirit or disposition is like. Young, brisk cock strutting around, thinking he knows everything. We all know what that rooster is like, right? Okay, so we know the moral of the fable. We understand why Aesop would have chosen the character that he did. So the next question in your assignment for this lesson is, how can this fable apply to your life? You have an idea? What do you think?
It's helping my life to know that if I'm cocky, I might lose something valuable.
Yeah, okay. Now let me say something about assignments, because what you just did would get marked wrong on an assignment. And the reason why is because what you did, the question is, how can this fable help you in your life? How can this fable apply to your life? And what most students do is what you just did. They restate the moral. And that's not what this question's asking. Okay? The moral of a fable, just listen a minute. The moral of a fable is a general moral lesson. It's general. It applies to anyone's life. The moral is general. When I ask you, how can this fable help you in your life, I'm asking you to think about some specific things. What's a specific way that this fable can help you in your life? For example, I can give you an example. There are times when there's something that I should do, that I know that I should do, but I'm not sure how to do it, and I would like to just ignore it. But I know that I should do it. I know other people do it. I know other wise people do it. But I don't feel like doing it, and I really don't understand why I should do it. I can say, I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say about this stuff. I'm going to do what I want to do. And when I do that, I act like the cock. I'll give you a good example from farming. When people start farming, sometimes they read books about farming, and the books that are written about farming are written by experienced farmers who have already had farms, have already had animals, have already done all those things. And when people start farming, they think that they know better than the old experts, right? And so the old expert will say, the first thing you need to do, if you're going to get animals, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure you build really strong fences. And building fences is expensive. It's very hard work. And so what do people do? They say, oh, come on. I don't need to build really strong fences. I'm going to have good cows. We'll keep an eye on them. We'll keep an eye on them. The kids will watch them. Right? They say, I don't need to build strong fences. I found this fence in this catalog. It's this electric wire. You just spread it around the field and you plug it in, and it only costs $100, and it keeps all the animals in. And they think all these people, all these old farmers with all their big fancy metal fences and barbed wire, and that's not necessary. All I need is this. And so the smart aleck, know-it-all, cocky young rooster just gets his cheap fence, puts his little fancy plastic wire fence around the pen, and what happens? The animals are everywhere, right? It doesn't work. The old farmers know what they're talking about. They didn't build those fences because they felt like it. You have to, right? But the young cock thinks that he doesn't need to do that, right? Whereas if you're getting started with something if you're getting started with something, you should ask for advice from people who have already done it. And when they give you advice, don't just assume that they're just making stuff up. If they give you advice with experience, they're probably trying to tell you what you should do based on their experience. Right? Does electric fencing keep sheep in? No. Right? Would an old farmer ever tell you to keep sheep with an electric fence? Never. Right? Will catalogs and people on the internet tell you that you can keep sheep with electric fences? Yes, they will. Okay? The old farmers won't say that. They'll tell you that that sheep will jump right through that fence, and you'll learn the hard way that they're right. So just one example is in farming, right? You should ask advice from old farmers and listen to their advice, or you might lose something valuable, all right? So think about your life, things you do, and think about if there's something in your life that you know is valuable, but you just don't know what to do with it, and instead of asking for help, you choose to act arrogant, you act cocky, and you might end up losing that thing. Or if maybe you've done that before. You lost something valuable because you didn't ask for advice about what you should do with it. So anyway, that's the fable of the cock and the jewel. I want you to think about it. Use the fable to help you in life, help you make good decisions. When you have a decision to make, ask yourself, what fable can help me make a good decision? And you'll find that these fables are often helpful, and they can keep you from making decisions that you'll wish you didn't make. All right? So to wrap up this class, take some time, write a summary of the fable of the cock and the jewel, a summary of what we talked about in this lesson, and make sure after this class you go over your notes, study the fable again, and do the assignment. If you haven't done the assignment already, do the assignment to prove that you learned this lesson and get credit for this lesson. And we can move quickly through these fables if you do the assignments. And remember what I told you about those assignments. So that's all for this fifth fable, the fable of the cock and the jewel.